Wonderful. So welcome again. We actually have a pretty straightforward agenda for today. Again, we're here for the listening session for the work of the Sustainability Advisory Council. This one set aside specifically for students here on campus. So after a short welcome, I'm going to hand it over to Missy Nergard, who will give a brief overview of the Sustainability Advisory Council, and then we'll devote the majority of our time together here for discussion. Because we have a small group, I don't think there's any need for us to break up into even smaller groups. We'll all just stick together to discuss as a team. And then at the very end, we'll just finish up with a few quick next steps. The other thing I just want to highlight is that throughout our time together today, if you have detailed materials, proposals, or other issues that we just aren't able to get to that you'd like to share separately, the council can be reached directly by an email as sac@sustainability.wisc.edu. At the end of the meeting, we'll have that email up on a slide and we'll remind you again. So no need to jot it down quickly, but we'll give you more options then. Last few things before we get going. I want to acknowledge that we are using technology, which means it's very possible that we will be at the whims of that technology. So if there is some sort of glitch while we're moving along, we should ask for a little latitude ahead of time in case that were to happen. In terms of ground rules, we encourage you, if you're comfortable, to please turn your video on for the meeting. But please keep yourself muted whenever you're not talking so that we can limit background noise. You can use the chat feature throughout to share resources, links, note any technical difficulties. Nathan will be keeping an eye on that and will respond to anything that comes up on there. And then finally, like I mentioned, that raise hand feature, which you can find in the participants window. You can use that if you have a comment or question while any one of us are talking, and then we'll pause and find a time for you to speak. But given all that, probably the most important thing I want to acknowledge is, even though we've got a small group, I feel pretty confident to say we probably have a range of experiences in this small group. That's perhaps experiences here on campus, that's experience working with issues of sustainability, or just using the technology we're using today. So I want to make sure that we all give ourselves permission to be a little unpolished in this space, especially when we get to the discussion session today. We really would love for you to feel comfortable voicing your thoughts and opinions, even if they're half-formed thoughts right now. So the flip side of that then is that we also ask that you please respect and honor each other's different perspectives. So hopefully we can create a comfortable, open, albeit virtual, collaboration space. So that's it for the welcome. So I'm going to hand it off to Missy, who is going to go over the Sustainability Advisory Council.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I know there's exciting things happening on television that you're missing out on, so we appreciate you being here with us. And one of the reasons that we're here is because the university is a little bit behind on formulating a strategic plan for sustainability, and that's one of the reasons that we formed a council for UW-Madison. So the council's purpose is to provide recommendations to our executive leadership in that regard. And we want to respect the mission and vision for sustainability at UW-Madison. And the first attempt to actually craft a strategic plan was in 2010. So it's about 10 years old. And we're recognizing that there's an evolution of the concept of sustainability, and there's an advancement of community priorities that weren't necessarily very prevalent in even 10 years ago. And our most important deliverable is a set of recommendations to the Vice Chancellor and the Provost on priorities. It's really easy to get in the weeds and say we need to do this, this, and this, and that. And what we've seen over the last 10 years is that plan, if we would have initiated it 10 years ago, would have missed out on a lot of opportunities. So we want to highlight priorities. We will gather initiatives as we move forward. We're humans, and that's just where our brains go. But we want to make sure that we are flexible and adaptable enough to handle everything that comes at us, and that this is not a plan that's just going to sit on a shelf and become obsolete. And this is actionable, and we want to get stuff done. So we want to look at a time frame aspect of it, and how we look at time as humans is a little different than some of our ecological systems, even as some of our social systems. So As you can see, we have a really aggressive time frame for the first year of this advisory council. And right now we are in week 2. So welcome to week 2 of this initiative. We just kicked off the council last week. So right now we're in the midst of gathering input to help inform and advise what the council is looking at. So your voice is critically important. And your voice is extra critically important as students. You're representing, I shouldn't put that on you, and you're not representing all 45,000 of you, but since you're the people that showed up, your voice is the most prominent right now. So we really are excited to hear what you have to say. So put everything out there on the table for us. And we'll take everything that you're putting out, we'll give that to the council, and that will help inform their recommendations. And what we're hoping for is over the course of the next, not even a year, turn over a set of recommendations to the executives, and then we're just going to start nailing out a plan. Now, to provide some context, because sustainability is often very much conflated with environment, I want to give an example of what a systems approach. And I'm going to shut off my video to do this so that I'm not worried about looking at you while I'm reading text. So Alex is going to help me with this. All right. So in June of 2018, I was at the University of Illinois attending a seminar on emerging contaminants in the water. And I sat with a graduate student from UW-Madison who was there to present her findings on chemicals clinging to microplastics in the water. 1 year later, I had taken the position here and I was embarking on the Wisconsin IDEA Seminar with 40 new faculty and administrators. And that week began with Bill Quackenbush, the Ho-Chunk tribal historian, walking us out to Picnic Point, having us sit at the fire circle, close our eyes, and envision the lake through Ho-Chunk memories. He described crystal clear waters and white sand. And with our eyes still closed, tribal members drummed and sang a welcome song. And we were told about how the sound of the music and voices would carry across the water, and you could see and hear the tribal neighbors from all around the lake. And Bill shared that memory with us that morning. But it's also a vision and it's a mission, and he delivered it with a clarity that these lakes once had. The history of sustainability at this institution didn't begin with the 2010 Task Force report, with Earth Day in 1970, or even with the founding of the institution in 1848. The history of sustainability here goes back 10,000 years, more than that really, and the legacy is something to honor and embrace. We often talk about systems approaches and sustainability, and it's nothing more than a means of describing incredibly complex relationships, removing the artificial linearity that we often impose on ourselves as humans. And I'd like to tell now a quick story about an imaginary yet plausible system. So we're going to go back and start with our microplastics. Particular microplastics are textile fibers from our carpets and clothing, dispersed through the air and water through the nastiest of vectors, our laundry appliances. And then our heroes step in. Assistant Professor Wee from engineering is developing ways to use light to remove the contaminants, and Professor Sarmati from Sohi is developing textiles that are less toxic and safer for the environment. And then let's say we partner with Under Armour and bring in our friends at Wharf to patent athletic gear that is non-toxic and doesn't shed fibers. And it's extra slippery so that our wide receivers and running backs are contributing to clear lakes while adding points to the scoreboard. And then we take that textile revolution and patent even further, and we use it for our commencement robes. As you can see, some of our alums take a little more fabric to cover them than others. And our alumni carry that vision forth and clean other waterways of plastics. And that is an example of a systems approach. It's leveraging our strengths and sharing our Badger spirit. You are architects of our future, and I invite you to use our history and long-held memories and your vision to bring clarity and purpose to our mission. We've fallen behind as an institution, but we haven't fallen apart, and together our work here will put UW-Madison back where we belong. I'm sorry. My partner actually works for State Farm, but it seems contradictory to me to be promoting American Family and J.J. Watts, but he's amazing. So one of the things we also want you to think about as you're proposing ideas and throwing out your vision is what our peers are doing. And this is something really important to us because we're competing, right? We're competing with other institutions of higher education. We're also working with them to solve problems. So some of our biggest competitors, for instance, are University of Michigan. They just keep kicking our behinds all over the place. But we also have aspirational schools, right? There's something about saying, hey, sustainability at Stanford is amazing. And then we also want to look globally. So if you look at what University of Sydney is doing in Australia, right on the front of their webpage, they say that they are tackling wicked problems, right? They're attacking the world's biggest problems, poverty, climate change, and it's right there and it's right out in front. And one of the things we also want to make sure we do as an institution is be completely and utterly transparent in everything we do. So University of Illinois, for instance, has an amazing dashboard that puts everything out there for everyone to see in a really digestible way. And one of the things I want to counsel is that even as we're trying to pull great ideas from our peers and our aspirational colleges, that will only get us equal to, or it will only get us equal to what our peers in aspirational schools are doing. We need innovative, out of the box thinking in really dynamic ways to transform our institution and what we're producing so that we can actually make an impact on the world. And we all know this is a really urgent need. So we're really asking for your brains, and no matter what you throw out there today, as Alex said, it doesn't matter if it's half baked, half thought out, throw it out there because we all build on each other. And that's the opportunity that this creates. Alex?
I'm actually going to hand it over to Deb, who's going to walk us through what our activity is going to be for the majority of our time together now. And you are on mute, Deb.
There you go. Thanks, Alex and Missy, and thank you all. I'll add my thanks to all of you for coming today and taking the time. I know you're all busy, so anytime you can, people, I'm always appreciative when people can take the time to have these sorts of deep thinking conversations. So what we're going to do, we're already a small group, so we're not going to break up into anything smaller, but we're going to do some introductions, and then we have 2 discussion questions that we're going to cover. So the first question is, imagine that UW-Madison is doing everything right when it comes to sustainability. Now it is 2035. What is different? We'll talk about that for a little bit. And actually, we'll give you some time to kind of think about that question for a little bit on your own first, and then we'll come together and talk about it. And then the second question is, in order to achieve the vision we just discussed, what are the most important sustainability priorities for the university to continue? So again, just to reiterate, to keep the vision that Missy outlined in mind, think about systemic change, think about how we might do things better. Yes, of course, we want to think about that, but also how we might do things differently. Kind of be careful to stay out of the weeds. Again, if you have some specific initiatives and information that you want to share with the Office of Sustainability, there's an opportunity to do that. And just be sure to share your airtime. So make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. Do we have any questions before we begin? And we will ask, hope you're not shy, to turn on your cameras and your microphones so that we can have the conversation and see all your really smart faces.
Hey, Alex, do you mind if I stop sharing so I can pull up the questions?
So we're going to start by giving you about 4 minutes to just sort of think a little bit about the questions, and then we'll go, when we get back together, we'll do introductions and then dive into the conversation. So we have a few minutes to just take some time on your own to gather your thoughts and think about what it is you might like to share when we come back together. Let's take maybe another 30 seconds yet, and then we'll come together and have our conversation. Okay, so maybe could we make the note page a little bit bigger so we could see the questions? But before we get into the questions, why don't we do some introductions? How about if we go start with Gwen, and then we'll go to Grace, and then to Jessie.
Sure. Okay, my name is Gwen, and I'm studying nutritional sciences and also hoping to add the global health major. And for favorite variety of apple, I'm actually working on Troy Farms right now, and I don't know what type of apple they're growing. I asked and they didn't know, but it was one of the best apples I've ever eaten. So
Great, thanks, Gwen. So we'll go Grace, Jessie, and then Lucas. Grace?
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Grace. I'm studying political science and environmental science. And I have to say my favorite kind of apple is Honeycrisp, like 100%.
Okay, Jessie, and then Lucas. Oh, you're muted, Jessie. There you go.
Okay. Hello, I'm Jessie. I'm studying computer science and math with the sustainability certificate. And I'll have to go Granny Smith for my favorite kind of apple.
Thanks. And Lucas?
Hi, my name is Lucas. I'm studying environmental sociology and environmental science, and I got to go with Honeycrisp as well.
Okay, great. All right, so let's dive into that first question. Imagine that UW-Madison is doing everything right when it comes to sustainability. Now it's 2035. What is different than it is today? It's a small group, so just feel free to jump in.
Did the screen get any bigger? I was trying to text Alex that I don't know how to make the screen bigger. So I'm sorry to interrupt the process.
I think you can make it bigger by doing Control+.
Okay,
Try that.
fun. I've turned into my parents overnight.
There you go.
Oh, right. No, I can't see it.
So then Control- will make it smaller.
All right.
Just right.
Got it. Sorry. Proceed.
Perfect, Missy. It's all good. All right, who's got something they want to share?
I can go, I guess. So
Thanks, Jessie.
this one's kind of general, but a commitment to net zero carbon for our either electricity or energy sources. And one way we could maybe start doing that is MG&E's Green Power Tomorrow program. I don't really know how it works at the university level, but for households, you can pay a little bit extra to get all of your energy from solar. And then ideally, eventually, maybe having like our own grid rather than buying credits or continuing with them, depending on how things go.
All right, so net zero carbon for electricity or energy, something similar to MG&E's Green Power Tomorrow program, and maybe even having our own grid. Other thoughts?
I think going off of that, just completely divesting from fossil fuels and investing more in green energy would be great.
And yeah, to add to the divestment part, I think a really important part of that would be transparency. We didn't do very well on the STARS report with investing transparency, and it's really hard for investors to give input right now when they can't really see how much of their investments are going toward fossil fuels.
Definitely.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I was mostly thinking about energy-related practices, and that's all been summed up pretty nicely so far. But I'm a sophomore, and so for the past year, I've spent most of my time eating at the dining halls here. And I know they've been making some great steps to eliminate plastic waste and source their ingredients in a better fashion. But I think there's always room to grow there. And I did see a large amount of plastic waste through over the past year of just eating there. So not as impactful as changing our energy practices for sure, but I think that's something that could be improved as well.
I definitely think that's important too. And I haven't eaten in like housing for a couple years, but there definitely didn't seem to be a lot of locally sourced foods. So that'd be awesome if there could be more in the future.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of products available now in like cans, which I've seen a lot of places switching to, or like the boxed water or other box containers, I think are a good option to look at.
Other ideas? Go ahead, Gwen.
I think that possibly maybe like requiring a course in sustainability for, I don't know if it would be for freshmen, but basically for every degree. And hopefully there would be some kind of community involvement with that as well. And then also, I don't know if it'd be part of that class, but definitely more education on like the indigenous history and just the land that we have right now from the Ho-Chunk people.
Other thoughts?
Sorry, keep muting. I'm not sure how much of this has already been implemented, because it looks like a lot of housing and grounds is already aware of LEDs, but having a commitment to all new lights being LEDs or some other like efficient sort of lighting.
Other thoughts? Don't be shy.
Pretty much everything I've thought of has been said already, but I know off-campus recycling programs are pretty messy right now, and there isn't a lot of education on that or implementation of that. Like my apartment building just throws everything away, so some way to work with those housing companies to better implement those programs would be good.
I know we're a small group, so we might be running out of ideas, and that's fine too. I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to say everything that you want to say before we move on to the next question. Jesse, I think you're still muted.
Okay, I think.
There you go.
Okay, I think it's like auto muting or something. I'm not sure why it keeps muting, but this one I actually just kind of stole from the Green Fund brainstorming, but having like integrated light sensors. So like when there's no one in the room, the lights turn off.
We have, well, when we worked in offices, we had that in our office, and every once in a while, one of us would have to wave our arms so that the lights would go back on because it couldn't, we didn't move big enough for it to sense us. So we got some exercise in keeping the lights on. Other thoughts?
Can I ask a question that's kind of built into this? So I'm Nathan Yondel. I work for the Office of Sustainability. I'm the assistant director. And I'm curious, you all are, this is our student only section, all those students are, or session, all those students are invited to all of our listening sessions. What do you think, I don't know how to say this except, what do you think sort of the student body would not look like, but what sort of culture would it have in terms of sustainability if things were going really well? What changes would you see in terms of behavior or involvement or attitudes or other kinds of things? And obviously built into that question is kind of how might we help cultivate that?
I mean, I think a huge way to to cultivate that culture of sustainability would be to have courses required, like degree requirements for sustainability or an environmental education, because I think a lot of students just don't know like a lot of like, if they're not in environmental sciences or something related, they don't have any like background on that unless they want to.
What do others think about that question?
I think at least from like circles that I've been in, I've kind of noticed that there's like some frustration with feeling like the burden as a consumer to make sustainable choices, especially with food. So I think if like local and other like sustainable options were kind of built into like the university food system, that would take away like a lot of the frustration.
Mm-hmm. Make it easy for people to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts about that? Ready to move on to the next question? So in order to achieve the vision that we just discussed, what are the most important sustainability priorities for the university to consider?
We've kind of talked about this already, but I think just a massive part of it that could have like a ripple effect throughout all aspects of our sustainability practices would just be incentivizing the UW community and students to be a part of whatever changes we hope to make in the future. Like whatever we do, I think it should be, it should feel like a communal and a group effort on the part of the administration as well as the student body.
Yes, people support that which they help create.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally being my former TA self here, like jumping in, but Lucas, what might like that look like? Could you try to offer maybe an idea or two of what that would look like?
Yeah, so I guess thinking back to my freshman year experience, I had just come out of high school. I was president of my school's Green Club. I had done lots of environmental advocacy. And personally, I don't know if this is just me. I feel like it shouldn't be this way. It's such a large college, but I felt pretty lost as to where I would want to go next. And especially after the pandemic, I've kind of struggled to find like a niche where I can like reach that same level of advocacy and devote lots of my time to volunteer work and other initiatives. So I don't know, maybe providing a more centralized way for freshmen to be connected to the resources on campus, extracurricular groups, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big place. It's hard to find things.
going off of that, just make sure I'm not muted. Okay. I think it's really easy to feel like you're in a bubble when you're on the campus. And I was lucky to be able to take a course freshman year that was really just a community involvement volunteer course. And it really got us out working with the community and working at the Lakeshore Nature Preserve, and just got you more connected with both the land and the people in Madison outside of the community. And I think that definitely had an impact on the rest of my time here.
So that looks like that's connected to that priority around education for students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Other things that are important priorities?
I guess like as far as like things that we could do pretty urgently go, I think switching to the Green Power Tomorrow source from MG&E is something that we could kind of do without a lot of like physically building infrastructure, and something that I think a lot of students really value.
Does it feel like that would be a quick win? Is that what you're thinking?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jesse. I think it's pretty easy as a student to get kind of disheartened if you don't see the university like creating much change. So then it's like hard to be like, oh, I want to take the initiative to like start a recycling program off campus or something like that if you're not watching like change at an operational level happen at the same time. So that was a really good point, Jesse.
Other thoughts on that? Again, it's a small group, so I know that we're probably not going to get a big long list like we did with that when we had bigger groups. But want to make sure you have a chance to think about it and add what's important to you to add.
This isn't like super related, but I did have like some questions surrounding the transfer from like the natatorium to the Nicholas Recreation Center, and like just how we're using our materials for that. Like I'm a lifeguard at the NIC, and we got all new materials for like our tubes and our fanny packs and all of that. And it was just, I had some questions surrounding like, did they just throw away all of the old materials from the NAT because that's not in use anymore? And then if so, why? Because a lot of those were still useful even though they weren't like the prettiest or newest materials. So I guess like transparency with that like movement from one facility to another, and I'm sure that happens in other buildings as well when they're like remodeling and whatnot.
And having some transparency about that. Yeah. Like it could be part of a report that they do on the build, you know, yeah. Other thoughts? Things that would be priorities? So is there anything we didn't ask you about that you would like to share with us? That's something that you came here wanting to say and you didn't get a chance to say it? We have some time, since we're not going to be doing small group share outs, we could think about that for a minute if that would be helpful for you. Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Looks like we might be ending a little bit early since we don't have lots of small groups to report out. So Alex, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Deb. And I will share my screen one last time. I don't really have too much for next steps. Really the most important thing I think we wanted to impart is just a really heartfelt thank you. I understand this is the end of a probably long and busy day, and agreeing to commit to spend time with us, to spend time looking at a screen again, and to spend time putting in the mental effort that's required to be present in this conversation is not easy. So we really appreciate you taking the time, and the feedback we received today is really truly invaluable to our process here working on the council. Now, as Missy mentioned, we are just at the beginning of this, so there are plenty of ways for you to stay informed and other opportunities to get involved and have your opinions known throughout it. So you can stay up to date on the work of the council at our website, which is linked here. We'll be posting agendas, meeting summaries, as well as recordings of each of the council meetings. We actually have the recording from our kickoff meeting, which occurred last week, up available to view. That included a kind of opening speech from Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, as well as the Provost and the Vice Chancellor, if you're all interested in checking that out. You can also stay up to date on the progress through our social media, which is at SustainUW, or the Office of Sustainability newsletter. In terms of other ways just to stay involved, we still have one more listening session. So if you didn't get enough of it here and you want to join again, we're doing this same time next week, Tuesday. Or if you have friends who you know kind of share similar values to you that weren't able to make this, that you think would benefit from having their voice heard, you can always let them know about this time as well. Also not on the screen is that actually hopefully tomorrow we're going to be opening up a survey as just another way for you, friends, any colleagues, anyone else that can provide input to it. So we'll follow up with a little email to the attendees about how that's available, and please share that out as just another method to respond. Yes, Missy?
Sorry, I totally forgot to mention that there is a student subcommittee to the Sustainability Advisory Council, and that's kind of huge. So my apologies. But you have members that are representing the student body on the Sustainability Advisory Council, but there's an additional subcommittee, and all of their contact information is available on the website. Is it? Yeah. So if you is not enough, you can look up who your other members are, but you have representatives there, so please advocate through them.
I don't think we actually have their emails on the website, but we have their names, and
We can hook you up if you don't know them.
Yeah, if you need a contact.
Thanks, Missy. And I know that they will be holding the subcommittee will be meeting kind of in between our the council meetings, and that is run through ASM, and so you can always check with them. I think they're hoping to plan to have some public comment period open in those meetings as well. And then lastly, I mentioned at the top, we do have a direct email address, sac@sustainability.wisc.edu. So other thoughts, supporting materials, proposals, other just general things you'd like to reach out, please feel free to reach out to us there as well. But that's all we had for you. Thank you for sticking with us. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time at the end of a busy day. And please feel free to reach out at any of these channels if you have any other thoughts or questions.
Also, if I could just make a quick plug for those of you who are not seniors, we have a really great Office of Sustainability internship. And so some of you may know about this, and if you're interested in applying, we'll be putting out that application probably midwinter. That would start in the spring, and you go for a full calendar year, sometimes more. So because you're here, you were the ones who showed up, you get the specialized pitch. And it's paid, by the way.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you all.